So you'll have to excuse me. I'm just getting in from a walk, but that made me think. And I still believe the best analysts are, on their toes. That is, people get freaked out by it, especially Americans, but good analysts will just walk around or check their phone or email, right? It's part of the point of what Freud invented, free association, right? Freud actually believes in free speech. So, unlike some people, right? So I'm doing this because it's the only way that I know, the best way for me to get my ideas across, so then I can formalize them in the written word. I'm going to talk about every psychoanalyst's least favorite subject, Jordan Peterson. I'm not completely stupid, guys. I understand why you might have a problem with him, but that's just it. You have an issue with Jordan Peterson. So first off, let's start with this New York Review of Books review, if you can call it that, because it totally skips the book, but by Mr. Mishra. I cannot pronounce his name. It's from London, I believe. And you can call me a racist for not being able to say his name. But that's because I don't pretend to know things that I don't. And that's the thing. I think that is one thing that Jordan Peterson has got, right? Jordan Peterson only speaks about what he knows about. And the thing is, I believe when he trashes things like Marxism and he doesn't trash Marxism, he trashes how it's been incorporated into the academic system in Northern America. But when he trashes, for example, postmodernism, I think he has done a decent enough job reading Derrida and Lacan, even to make the claim that he makes about them, being bullshit. But so this is the thing. He only says what he knows. He knows a lot, but that's why it's so easy for people to project and make fantasies about what he hasn't said. Case in point, the name of this article, Jordan Peterson and Fascist Mysticism. I mean, the title alone tells you straight off the bat that the guy is an academic. And I use that in the strongest pejorative possible. Academics are the laziest intellectual people I've ever met in my life. The author attacks Jordan Peterson for essentially politics, saying that, people in the past have used mythologies to provoke fascism. Sure. They've also used mythologies to provoke everything else in existence. That's what people do. That's one of Jordan Peterson's points. Jordan Peterson also almost never gets into politics. And if you actually watch him or read him, which I know you don't, he, with equal candor, bashes liberals and conservatives and calls them out for their bullshit and their positive attributes, right? Jordan Peterson is a very good psychologist, a very noble psychologist in the sense that, yes, psychoanalyst, I get the negative scientism of being a psychologist, but he does do a very good job as a psychologist. He points out what we know, what he can actually verify. So everyone goes after what he doesn't say. And they all attack him on the basis of what he doesn't say. In a way, you could say that Jordan Peterson is brutally honest, but you can tell that he's only brutally honest about what he knows. He doesn't let his guard down, right? It's right why he's so tense, right? Because he doesn't let what he doesn't know. And that's usually where people relax. So in this sense, it's an interesting inversion of what we can say half speaking, right? He is speaking the truth, but he's not speaking what he doesn't know. That is very different than, half speaking in the way Lacan might have it, in the sense that you don't finish your sentences, in the sense that signifiers are dripping with meaning that is not contained in the conscious word. But that's why Jordan Peterson is both right on the money and why people can attack him so easily, because they project whatever they think he's not saying. And they do write, academic essays about it, like this New York Review of Books piece. Why do I say that Jordan Peterson is a psychoanalyst and doesn't know it? In fact, I bet he probably does know it. But again, he hasn't said that, right? Just like you can't go and fantasize about what his political convictions are because he won't say what his political convictions are. That's your fantasy. You make guesses, right? You make educated guesses because you believe when he talks about he talks about traditional relationships, but he talks about things that get placated as traditional relationships. He essentially talks about the binary that most good psychoanalysts acknowledge existing, and psychologists who believe sexuality is biologically predicated, which it is to a certain extent, certainly also agree. So I say Jordan Peterson is a psychoanalyst because, one, he's the only public figure I've ever known in my life, besides maybe Zizek, who actually gets Freud. If you listen to him, he gets Freud. I don't like how he uses the word instinct, but I believe he uses it purposely to emphasize his specific belief in how much of a role biology predicates language and consciousness. He speaks through desire, right? He emphasizes this in his book, essentially. It's not Lacanian, but it's also not self-help. He doesn't advocate life happiness. He advocates a search for meaning, an unspecified search. By the way, he does not ever say a traditional search for meaning, right? He's very psychoanalytic in this sense, again, a very subjective, particular meaning that you must find, but that was probably already there to begin with. I really like this line of his. It's funny to me because only a Canadian can philosophize about beavers, right? But he says beavers don't make great dams because they got a great degree in making dams. They make the dams because they're beavers. And there's a lot of historical theoretical precedences for the notion of a calling, right? And that Western discourse, especially, I hate using this term, but capitalism removes us from these more natural callings of our being, right? There's a phenomenological tradition. There's all sorts of ways you could put that someone must find their specific calling in the given society. And now, again, I apologize. I know I am free associating or rambling, but it's the best way I know to get these ideas out until I can formalize them. He speaks through desire. Now, he edits his thought. Okay? This is the trick. He only says what he knows. Another way of putting this is he only emphasizes the positive, in the sense of positive or negative. I'm blanking on the term, quantitative, not good or bad, not ethical. He is very correct when he says that Freud was so brilliant, that's why people still hate the guy and still don't get him. And that basically his insights were so brilliant, yes, they were already there, but he formalized them and turned the ideas into a practice. They were so absorbed into society that they became second nature. And yes, psychologists, even you absorbed them. But what you concentrate on is what Freud got wrong, which was like minuscule shit. But you've made Freud just about that minuscule shit about what he got wrong. That's why Stanford and every other university took Freud out of psychology department and put it in the fucking fiction library. But also, I say he's a psychoanalyst because he's both a really great psychologist and a psychoanalyst, because he speaks about what psychology won't speak about. Psychology will also only tell you what they know, right? But the problem is that empirical data, statistics, even neurological research, brain scans only can pick up the conscious, some of what we could call unconscious, but it's mainly, perceptions and other things that are logical and irrational, right? It's not going to pick up why you unconsciously make the same mistakes over and over, repetition, or why you strive for something that you are not aware of that you want. And a bunch of other things that are, to a large degree, probably predicated on sexuality, on biological sexuality, through Oedipal triangulations and formulations of language acquisition. But see, Jordan Peterson goes beyond psychologists. He brings in essentially, at least what people think about when they think of psychoanalysis. That is how he does indeed do something that good psychoanalysts don't do. So good psychoanalysts don't have a moral imperative. They don't tell you how to live life. He has a bit of that, but it's so broad and so much about common sense that you really can't, catch him as being an authority figure, right? And that's the thing. He has a tremendous paternal transference. He is a daddy figure. I don't care. You can call me a fascist. A big problem today can be boiled down to the fact of many absent father figures. Even if you have a dad, he's hardly a dad. He doesn't complicate the situation with the mother. And everyone is looking for mommy to take care of everything. At least if you are, to use a psychologist term that Peterson employs, if you have these liberal, creative personality traits, which might coincide with political opinion. And guys, so if he's a father figure and he's just essentially doing what a dad does, saying no, laying down conditional love rather than unconditional love, that's why he has such an immense transference, right? I mean, I haven't crunched the numbers, but I'm willing to say he's more popular than Lacan or Freud combined, at least as far as having a direct transferential influence. I believe him that he gets thousands of emails a day saying that he's saved people's lives. And if you go on YouTube and watch the videos people have made and the comments and everything, it's very clear that he is allowing people to break free of these tremendous knots that politically correct academic discourse has woven on top of people's lack. Or you can say have woven on top of how to desire, how to find one's desire. And so to go back to what I was saying about him only saying what he knows, that is a paternal role, right? He's not giving you the what can't be said. He's not giving you the emotional support. He's giving you conditions that you can apply to your life. And I believe, and it plays out in my clinical practice, where I have to spend a lot of time having these sort of preliminary sessions to get to the real work, where you're essentially employing common sense and CBT-esque conditions and just common sense facts to get people to acknowledge the reality principle, to get people just to acknowledge who they are, just without the theory. Right? What Peterson doesn't talk about, but I know that he has the aptitude to speak about later, but hasn't yet, is what you do after you've hystericized the obsessional, after you have hystericized the obsessional. In other words, how you get them from life coaching to being on the couch, right? Then you talk about the uncommon sense. You talk about the unconscious things that just come in and disrupt your life, no matter how hard you try to consciously, logically, or rationally control them, right? The irrational, but illogically logical framework of the unconscious that is predicated on sex, that which keeps coming up, that which never quite goes away, that which always returns. I believe, as I believe Freud would have believed, that it is at least at its basis predicated on biology, which sets up a binary, male or female, but then is radically disrupted by language. What Freud got with the Oedipal complex and Lacan put to the founding principles of 20th century philosophy, that language is thinking, that language structures thoughts, that is the fundamental component that sets humans apart from animals, right? Language complicates sexuality. Language complicates the Oedipal triad, mother, father, baby, and then then the verdict is still out whether it's whether it's biologically predicated past that point or not. I think it is, but the point is the nominations of hysteric as female and obsessive as male are much more intelligent to think of sexuality as an epistemic form, right? That there are two distinct logics of thought, which is based on language and then predicated on sexuality. Now I realize I've talked about a whole bunch of stuff, but I just wanted to say that I really think Jordan Peterson is important clinically. There's a reason why he has so much transference. I hope the psychoanalysts can embrace that. He doesn't stop at Peterson, continue to work as a good psychoanalyst, but it really does help people understand themselves to employ essentially common sense, but not rely on the naive logical positivism of what we can empirically know, aka psychology. I really believe people who just write off Jordan Peterson just haven't read him or are so blinded by their own tastes that they won't listen or read what he's actually saying. That's about it, but as you know, it's never it. Thanks. He says what he knows and only what he knows. That's Jordan Peterson's trick, but that's also why all his critics are wrong. Because everything he says is spot on. It's their fantasies about his political, moral convictions, with the exception of the religious conviction. He is a Christian, but he reconciles it well with science and psychology and psychoanalysis. He knows psychoanalysis. That's my point. His importance is clinical. No one is looking at Jordan Peterson for what he is, which is a clinician. And I bet a very, very good one. And if you read him, a very, very psychoanalytic one, and the first public figure in my life to really get Freud, with the exception of Zizek. And a final note, Zizek says all this stuff that we can't pinpoint through psychology, right? He says the philosophical, poetic nature that speaks so readily to unconscious theories of the mind. But he's leaving out Peterson. I hope they can be, synthesized. And I think it's crucial in today's clinic. That's my ethical imperative. Thank you.